Everything with guns off the ground! Go!
Hello and welcome to Intoxicated Masculinity, where we talk about Dune culture, more Dune culture. We're doing kind of an informal little episode here. We just finished watching the Denis Villeneuve Dune remake. We're all having a Miondkiller, which you can see just posted on Wednesday. And I think we like it.
Yes. The Miondkiller?
Well, both.
Yes.
Yes. So we're going to probably... I don't want to do a full in-depth review right now. I kind of want to roll that over in my head for a little while, so we'll probably get to that soon. But right now we're just going to kind of talk about our basic thoughts on the movie. So, just very quickly, are we thumbs up or thumbs down on this? Because I'm very thumbs up on this one.
Yeah, I'd say it's good. I have a couple of small complaints. It's really kind of nitpicking. I'm not entirely sure that anybody has ever captured Gurney Halleck right on film. It's a little bit, it's almost like you have to give up on one aspect of him. Like, you can't have him singing and fighting at the same time, and because it doesn't translate real well. And I think some of the movie was left up to you having already known the story. Anyone coming into it cold would probably have a couple of issues trying to follow what happened, why it happened.
You wouldn't like
the Harkonnen attack kind of comes a little out of nowhere if you're not already familiar with the story. But that's just really nitpicky kind of stuff. I thought it was really well done. I thought they stuck close to the book. They didn't cut out anything major save for the dinner where you kind of see some more of Arrakis culture outside of the Fremen. But it was really good. All of them were well cast. I didn't have a single complaint with any of the actors, especially Timothy Chalamet was really good.
Chalamet. Well, Gurney Halleck he said some prose several times in the movie, and I think that's as close as they got. It's not him, playing the Balisette.
Didn't even show one.
But I think that he was cast great. I think, keep thinking of his father. Josh. Brolin. Apparently I wasn't even thinking of his father. I thought he looks like a tough, I sort of like, it's kind of cliche, but I like the smile Gurney. He's like, I am smiling. It was a good line. For me, I'm a big Denis Villeneuve fan. Villeneuve, probably mispronouncing his name, apologies. I think the thing that I said before and said a couple of the episodes going into this, that whether it's good or not, it's going to be gorgeous, and it was definitely gorgeous. I think his visual style is just kind of incredible. But yeah, I liked it. What's your kind of initial thoughts?
I think you guys covered most of it. Just really good visuals. With the abilities of studios and effects artists and stuff now, it's by far the best looking version of the Dune series that I've ever seen. I mean, it blows the other ones out of the water visually. Character development, I'll leave that more to you guys. I liked the characters. I thought they were well cast. Like, I didn't really know some of the people that were playing some of the characters, but I think they're sticking to the original idea pretty well. And I'm really glad that they did break it into two different parts, because it's just so much movie. So
some people might view that as a little spoilery, but I don't think it really is. Again, when you start this movie, it says Dune Part 1. And yeah, I think very definitely there's so much going on. The thing that and we're not going to get into the spoilers. I'm going to tell you who dies or how they die or anything like that. But the thing that I take away as a general sense of the movie that I didn't get either in the miniseries or in the David Lynch movie, and almost didn't get as even in the book, because I like the book, but the book is not perfect. I don't think it's flawless or anything like that. And the thing that I get the sense of is in this version of the movie, things have time to happen. Whereas definitely in both movie versions we saw, it really felt like, okay, let's get to this scene that happens in the movie, to the next scene that happens in the book, to the next thing in the book. And they viewed the book almost like as a roadmap rather than a narrative. And I really felt like in this movie, things get sort of timed to develop, and we get scenes with like Leto and Paul in the graveyard. And just them kind of being together, and just these little scenes, and they don't feel like they're rushed, like you're trying to get from here to the next thing. So that's what I really liked about it. It felt like things have time to develop.
Yeah, I mean, you go to a movie, you expect, to see the movie. The movie's supposed to explain itself visually, and not just gloss over things and be like, oh yeah, remember how we did that thing that we're just now talking about that nobody watching the movie saw? And now you actually see it.
It's actually one of my problems with movies as a medium. I'm a reader. I would rather read the book. TV series is the next runner-up, because TV series has that time. You can take 3-4 seasons, 12, 24 episodes long, and really flesh out characters and ideas. Movies, you're forced to sit there for like 2 to 3 hours, which is a long time to sit in one spot, but nowhere near enough time to tell something as epic as Dune. So I am glad that they have taken the time and made a second. I don't think he could have made a third, but from where they're starting off, it'll be easy to fill another movie on the second one. So.
Yeah, and there's certain people. Yeah, we won't get into specifics because I think when in our next discussion we get sort of more in depth. We will. There are certain people from the book that are not in this movie at all. That are completely left out. And it is not to say that they will not be a part of this narrative, but that they sort of focused on the people. And I think that's one thing you get both in the David Lynch movie and in the miniseries, where it feels like, especially towards the beginning, it's like we got to introduce every character. And maybe the miniseries was worse in this case, although they both kind of have the same problem, where there's 30 characters and we need to introduce all these 30 characters within the first 30 minutes of the movie. And it feels like kind of like overload. Whereas here, there is several very, very important main characters that we haven't met. And because of that, the time that we would have spent meeting those characters, we've gotten to know the characters that we did meet a lot better. There's one character in particular, well, I don't think that's a spoiler. Jason Momoa plays Duncan Idaho. And I feel like both in the David Lynch and in the miniseries, Duncan Idaho is just kind of a blip. A little bit more of a blip.
He's very much there and gone.
And I think in this, like, Jason Momoa, I think did a really good job. We're Iowa people, but we're not, sycophants to Jason Momoa. But I think that Jason Momoa did a really good job in that role. He sort of made it believable. I started when I started watching the movie. I started because Kale brought up Dungeons and Dragons the other day, and I started deciding which class each person would be. And obviously, Gurney Halleck is a bard, and I thought of Duncan Idaho as like a ranger. He's a fighter, but he's also like out there, doing things and kind of like getting information and all that. And I feel like Jason Momoa really put that, because he's tough, but he's not just like big strong guy. He's also like, he knows how to fit in and he respects these people and he's trying to learn about them and all this other stuff. And he did a good job. I was kind of surprised how good of a job he did, actually.
I think he is well cast as the strong fighter in a kind of almost Bedouin tribe. That's what made him famous in Game of Thrones. I think it's probably it's a very niche typecast, but I think that's what he's really good at.
I think he's a lot more cerebral in this, though.
Yeah.
Like he's not he's not dumb.
Thug.
Yeah.
I think anybody, I know the Wheel of Time series is supposed to be starting here on Prime pretty soon, not to date the video, but I think anybody that goes through that will recognize Herbert's influence. And if anybody is Brandon Sanderson fans, I think you'll recognize both of their influences on him. I think you could make a very clear timeline, in the way that they do with fantasy with Tolkien. In this version of fantasy, I think you can make a clear timeline from Herbert to Jordan to Sanderson and others beyond there. It was published in 1965, and it has a whole lot. Like it has really influenced the genre quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I just see a lot of parallels with a lot of the other writers at the time. And again, parallels not meaning ripped off, or, I mean, a lot of these writers write differently, kind of along the same lines. But, you know, your Isaac Asimovs, your Robert Heinlein, Philip K. Dick. Who was the one that wrote 2001? Was that Heinlein?
Arthur Clarke.
Arthur C. Clarke, that's right. I'm sorry, Arthur C. Clarke. And it's sort of people writing science fiction in kind of maybe a more cerebral way than just like, you know, spacemen shooting aliens with lasers and pew pew pew. And I think that, you know, we've got the Foundation series, which is currently on Apple. Is it?
I think it said it was on Max.
It's on something. Anyway, there's the Foundation series, which, you know, I'm interested in that because I'm a big fan of those books. And it's interesting. I feel like we're living in the first period where you can do these things just from a technological point of view. Because honestly, you know, even in 2000, I mean, the 2000 miniseries obviously didn't have the cash to throw out if they do, but even if they did, I don't think you can really do some of this stuff as much justice as you can today.
Yeah.
Where it just looks great. I mean, like the shields.
Jumping back to the visuals, the cast makes it good. They make it believable. That, you know, this thing makes a shield and that this laser cuts through entire buildings or whatever. But really, it's just like location. Those, like, it's hard to fake a desert. We talked about in the miniseries version. Like you were talking about how everything was done on a soundstage, so the lighting was unnatural, and just like it's hard to capture the feeling of being in a vast desert unless you're in a vast desert. Because then it's like you said when we were watching, it's like a sweeping ocean that just, you know, you can't see the edges of it anywhere. And
yeah, it feels like a world. It doesn't feel like, and you know, I think even Lynch kind of fell into that. I mean, just due to technological restraints. I mean, not even a question of the filmmaker's abilities or anything like that. It's just like there's so much you can do, and yeah.
I think that really speaks to Herbert's ability as a writer too, because the stark beauty of the desert was pretty adequate.
Well, they sometimes talk about how sort of the stage is an actor. You know, the setting is the actor. So it's like there's this other actor in this movie called Dune. And it sort of has all these parts to play. I mean, it's you know, arguably the most important character.
I think some people have the wrong impression of a desert. They think, oh, that's just a dead place where nothing happens, and really, it's quite beautiful.
And there's constant movement.
Yeah,
it's like things in a desert. I mean, even without the sandworms, which the sandworms are always hopping and bopping around. Although they probably describe themselves that way. But you know, there's tides. There's these dunes are moving. You know, there's life. There's all these things happening in a desert. I think you're right about that.
Yeah, when on my trip out to San Diego, we went through some white sands where you just see like blotches of like rock, a little bit of bush here and there, something like that. But it was just so surreal and just so pure. You know, just clean.
And in the book, they talk, they talk about how many names for different types of snows Eskimos has, but in the book there's a lot of differences in the sand. There's drum sand and pea sand and sinking sand and all this, and they don't go into that in the movie because how do you translate?
I don't think it would really be possible.
Yeah.
I thought, and this isn't going to get too in depth, but just dip our toe a little bit. I thought Raban was used really well, and I think that. And again, this is a problem.
I think
take one step back.
Batista.
It is. But one of the things that I think that when we walked out of the David Lynch and the miniseries, we obviously had our opinions. I think Kel and I were a lot more negative on the miniseries. Brandon was a little more positive. I feel like they look more similar now than they did before we watched the remake, because I feel like they both kind of have similar problems. Neither one of those movies has any idea what to do with Raban, because Raban is not a particularly big or important character in the book, and so I think that Villeneuve has found a way to use him in a way where, I mean, he doesn't have a huge part in the movie. He's not like on screen a ton, but when he is on screen, it's very effective. and you
Very
sort of
clear what his intentions are.
right. He's very
And I think that's because Batista has a presence.
oh, he very
You
definitely.
know,
does.
he started off as a wrestler, and people tend to think of them as not great actors. I think he might be an exception.
I think he's good, but on top of what I think that Raban is doing two things. He's being Raban, which Raban's character is important to the overall narrative. Which if you've read the books, you can kind of understand why he's important. But also, we get to see him as shorthand for what the Harkonnen are like.
Yeah.
Is you sort of get this idea that Raban is basically like what all the other Harkonnen want to be. Because in fact, there's even parts of the movie where I saw a character that I was like, wait a minute, is that Batista? Because not only do they have a similar, sort of ideology and a similar psychology, they even look a little bit alike.
Yeah.
They all have the shaved head and they have the kind of the sallow complexion, and like it gets to a point where you kind of can't tell. It's hard to tell them apart, and I feel like that's an intentional choice by the director because they are kind of faceless. They're like bald, big, mean, and that's sort of their ideal.
Speaking of which, the Baron himself is really well done. He's almost... In Michael Myers, in Halloween Part 2, there's that part where he comes out of the darkness and kills that nurse. He just kind of is there. There's a lot of that.
It's a great horror movie scene.
And there's a lot of... Actually, the Harkonnen and the worms are kind of the same. The Baron and the worms are kind of the same. They don't show them a lot, but when they do, it's the menacing... There's a part where, in the movie...
Ominous.
Where the Duke Leto is laid out, naked, dying, at the table.
Spoilers, but
then they come down and they give this long shot from his point of view, and the Baron in the book is in suspensors because he's really fat and it's carrying him. But here he kind of comes up and there's this kind of weird, almost like horror movie Slender Man thing where it's like
Jaws.
Attached to the table and he kind of just slowly...
The visual I had, and this isn't really that spoiler. If you don't Dune, you don't Dune. Come on. I think that's very much due to the way it's shot, the placement of the camera.
Yeah, very much.
Because you don't see the Baron, you just see like his feet kind of gliding across the table. It's very creepy.
It's like his cloak or something becomes almost like legs, like he gets super tall or something. I don't know. It was really well done, and especially if you've seen our reviews of the other two series. The Baron is probably the most wrong out of all of them. The most gotten wrong by the other two.
And I think we agree that in the Lynch film, he was probably at the cartooniest. That's a word. And then in the miniseries, he was less cartoonish, but still cartoony. And in this, it's
very dark.
The actor's name,
Stellan
Skarsgård.
Very menacing. Very.
Well, not just menacing, but very muted.
Yeah.
He is not doing a lot of acting, but the acting that he's doing is very well done.
And when he comes out of the... I mean, it looks like the Lazarus pit. When he comes out of the oil, and just speaks for a little bit and goes back, it's... I mean, he's a horror movie waiting to happen. It's...
Yeah, it's a... Yeah, I really liked it. I think it's a... Plus, again, I can't say enough how just pretty the film is. Like, I feel like you could watch this movie on mute in the background and just look over every so often and be like, oh, that looks great. Yeah, I liked it all. There's a couple of other things I want to talk about, but I feel like they're getting maybe a little too spoilery.
Let's not get too deep.
But yeah, it's great. The one other thing too, and I feel like none of the other movies did. And again, it strikes me how much now the Lynch and the miniseries almost fade together a little bit. And in one regard, you could tell the Sardaukar from the Harkonnen pretty easily, and they were similar and different because the Sardaukar are these sort of they're very militaristic, obviously, but fiercely loyal and tough fighters, whereas the Harkonnen fighters are sadists. I mean, they're and not as good of fighters as the Sardaukar because they're not as militaristic, but they're also much more brutal and much more like the Sardaukar will kill anybody that the Emperor tells them to kill. And the Harkonnen will kill people because they want to kill people and because they enjoy it.
Because they're sociopaths.
Right, they're really, really brutal people. So, I don't know. I think maybe... the movie does a lot of things right, but maybe the thing the movie does the most right is sort of defining the Harkonnen. Because honestly, I don't even feel like the Harkonnen were defined that well in the book.
Well, honestly, there was one part I will say goes above and beyond the book is because the Emperor does feel threatened by both the Atreides and the Harkonnen. But the movie makes a better job of it explaining why he gave Arrakis to the Atreides and how it will weaken both houses when they go after each other. And that he felt threatened by the Atreides' military power, but he felt threatened by the Harkonnen wealth. And he intended to get both of them weakened by this war. And the movie explains that so succinctly and so quickly. It happens before you even get an idea. And I think the book actually doesn't do as good a job right there.
Yeah, it's one of those. So we talked about this a little bit, definitely in the Lynch movie, about how do you do this thing. And this is why again I'm just gushing about Denis Villeneuve. I love his directing. It's fantastic. Again, watch Blade Runner 2049. Be one of the 500 people that actually watch that movie because it's just so good. We were talking about how do you film this? Like how do you make that work? And the way you do that is you hire a really good filmmaker that can come up with a way to do that sort of in shorthand. And I think he just does a really great job of that. About saying things in shorthand that other filmmakers would have, for example, just put a voiceover and said, this is the thing.
Speaking of which, you were asking earlier what you thought other 80s movies he might remake and make better. Maybe the criteria is movies with voiceover exposition is what he needs to crack.
Well, again, that would be because of both, yes.
Yeah.
We may do an episode. We may just do a short hits thing. I think I would like to look at some '80s movies that Denis Villeneuve could remake.
How about Legend?
Was there exposition in that one?
Crawl.
No, but it.
I didn't say anything. We're cutting those out.
What? Did you say Kroll?
I didn't say anything, Kayla. Neither did you. But yeah, so clearly we like this movie,
Yeah.
and would recommend seeing it.
Yeah.
So this is the first. This is the first one of these properties that we can legitimately, without conditions or anything else, say this is a good movie and you should see this movie.
Yeah.
It's currently streaming. We watched it streaming. If you've got a theater and you can go to the theater, recommend going to the theater because it's a very cinematic movie. It's very big.
Still a pandemic.
I think it was specifically filmed for IMAX.
I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't looked it up, but mask, vaccination, come on, stop. Just do those things.
Spent a lot of time on the Thopter. and got that really good too.
Yeah, the Thopters looked really good. It was another one of those.
I'm still free. I wore a mask. I got vaccinated. Look at me. I'm free.
We're talking about Dune.
Okay.
Yeah, the Thopters looked really good. It's one of those things. I think the Thopters were. It's one of those things. So there's a lot of stuff when you get into Kurt Vonnegut or Isaac Asimov or Frank Herbert or any of these people. They're writing something in the '60s and they're writing it with a sort of a '50s or '60s sort of mindset. And you can tell they were picturing something that if you put that on the screen the way they pictured it now, it wouldn't look good or it would look weird. And so there's two ways you can go. The way the other films have gone, where you kind of just do something kind of just totally different and just kind of fudge it and pretend that's the thing, or you do what this movie did, which is you sort of interpret it. You take what they said and you turn it into something that can look good while still seeming like what they were talking about in the book, but looking really good on screen. And I think the Thopters were a great example of that.
Yeah, they spent a lot of time on it because it's the main thing you see. You see spice carriers and harvesters and stuff like that, but it's the Thopter that comes up time and again and rescues. And I'm impressed that they did the flight over the storm thing. Even it was really good. And they spent a lot of time on it.
The thing I said at the beginning, and I love quoting myself because I'm brilliant. When we were watching the movie, a little ways in, I said, this looks like concept art. And if you're into movies, or if you're like when we were younger and you used to buy like the special packs that would include like a booklet that had the art from the movie and all that other stuff. The 3 DVD pack of whatever
In a metal case.
in a metal case, obviously in a metal case. And you would see the concept art, and you look at the concept art, and you'd be like, "Wow, that looks great." And you look at the movie, and you're like, "Well, that's pretty good too." But it's very clear that the director, the cinematographer, whoever said, "Well, we can't do that, so we'll do like something close to that." I feel like this, like the person who did the concept art walked on stage and was onto the set and was like, "Wow, you just did exactly what I wrote in the concept art," and you just don't see that.
Except for The Mandalorian.
Well,
The concept art at the end of it looks quite a bit like the actual show. Whether or not you like the show, the concept art translated very well.
we might talk about The Mandalorian sometime. I have thoughts about The Mandalorian. But, and they're not all, they're a lot positive. They're not entirely positive. It's complicated.
Grogu.
That's the stupidest name in the world. Anyway, so we like the show. You should see the movie. It's not a show, it's a movie.
You will like the movie.
Go watch the freaking movie.
We've been having cocktails, so forgiveness. That being said, that's an empty cocktail glass. I want to thank everybody for watching. Please like and subscribe and share if you can. Brandon, do you have any final thoughts?
When you said forgiveness, I wanted to say go read the Cradle series.
Fair enough.
Go watch the movie.
Go watch the movie. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe. Have a good drink. Have a good day.
Smile, Gurney. Smile.
You people won't see how long this is taking to pour.